The next step in the evolution of comics is called Webtoons. Hi there, everyone. I'm Jeff. JR is the producer, and this is Plain English, where we help you upgrade your English skills with current events and trending topics. I don't know exactly, but from my experience, I would guess the average age of a Plain English listener is somewhere between 28 and 32. And if you fall in that range or above, you might not know about Webtoons. I didn't know about them, and JR didn't either, but they are popular with the generation behind us, primarily in Asia, and their popularity is spreading around the world. Webtoons, and that's what we'll talk about in today's lesson. In the second half of the lesson, I'll show you how to use the English phrase identify with, which is a really good phrase to know. The full English lesson, by the way, including the transcript, can be found at plainenglish.com/393. Let's dive in. Comics are cartoon drawings. In their current form, they date back to the 1800s, but they exploded in popularity in the mid-20th century in the US, Europe, and Japan. Comic strips are a series of drawings laid out horizontally that tell a small story with quotes and captions. They were published in newspapers either every day or once every week. From day to day or week to week, comic strips could build on one another to tell a larger story. Some of the most famous animated characters began as comic strips, like the X-Men, Avengers, Superman, Batman, Spider-Man, Incredible Hulk, and Wolverine. Comic strips evolved into comic books, where the illustrator had a larger canvas on which to tell a more complete story. And of course, comics transitioned to the small screen and the big screen as television series and big movie franchises carried those stories forward. But now we have a 21st century adaptation of comics called Webtoons. We experience so much of the world these days on our smartphones, so it's only fitting that Webtoons are designed specifically to be consumed on smartphones. And they come from a place that is often a global cultural leader, South Korea. I'll describe a typical Webtoon in a second, but before I do, let me share a little bit about what these are exactly. They are digital comics intended to be consumed on a smartphone. They feature a mixture of drawings and text, but typically no sound or video. And they're usually arranged as seasons with multiple episodes. Each episode might be 50 or even 100 illustrations in length. New episodes often come out weekly, just like a TV series. The business model is similar to other online publishing models in that creators can make money from ads shown alongside their webtoons. While some show a limited number of episodes for free and charge a small fee for the rest. Webtoons are available in Korean, obviously, English, Spanish, Chinese, French, Dutch, and a handful of other languages. The biggest purveyor of Webtoons is a website called Webtoons.com. I'll link to it in the transcript. On the site, you can discover new Webtoons by category like drama, romance, sports, daily life, fantasy, and suspense. I'll warn you, though, the target market is definitely kids. Most of the Webtoons I scanned took place in high schools. So here's what Webtoons are like. First, they have a vertical orientation, so you consume the comics by scrolling from top to bottom, much like you'd scroll down a website from panel to panel. It has, in other words, an infinite canvas. Unlike a horizontal comic strip, which is limited to just a few panels, or a comic book, which has fixed page sizes, a webtoon can be as long as the author wants. The only limitation is the width of a smartphone screen. The illustrations in Webtoons can, therefore, vary in size. Some illustrations are small but wide. Others are tall and take up the full width of your phone's screen. Webtoons illustrators borrow concepts from modern web design. They make generous use of white space to call attention to certain things. They use color contrasts, lines, and fading images to transition from illustration to illustration. Quote bubbles are popular in traditional comics, and they feature somewhat in Webtoons too. On a Webtoon, however, there are many more options for quote bubbles. They can be big or they can be small. They can also be integrated into a drawing, hover above or below a drawing, or even separate one drawing from another. It's 2021, so some illustrations also feature computer and cell phone screenshots showing text message conversations between characters. Below the Webtoons is an area where fans can comment and talk about the storyline with one another. Commenters talk about what they like, what they noticed, what they didn't like, and especially how they identify with what happened in the plot. I got through a few lessons of a Webtoon called Maya's World. It starts out with a girl who's crying and alone outside her school. A boy comes by to cheer her up, but she's not in the mood to talk. Maya eventually goes to a different school in another city. She means to say goodbye to the boy, but they don't connect before she has to leave. Although she finds academic success in her new school, she doesn't seem to fit in socially. But then, a chance encounter? Well, I won't spoil the rest for you. You can look up the rest of Maya's World on Webtoons if you want. The link is in the transcript at plainenglish.com/393. I'm going to read you a few Webtoons descriptions so that you get a sense of what's out there. I'll put links to the English versions of all of these in the transcripts at plainenglish.com/393 so you can check them out. First up, The Makeup Remover by Lee Yun. 8.1 million likes. After years of being told to focus on studying, Yi-Sol feels lost when she starts college and is suddenly expected to pay attention to makeup. That's in the romance category. That one, by the way, is on episode 88. That's a long one. But that pales in comparison to My Giant Nerd Boyfriend. Just guess how many episodes there are of this one. First, here's the description. Having a boyfriend who's a full foot taller than you might seem adorable at first, but it usually just ends up causing a whole bunch of minor inconveniences. So how many minor inconveniences do you think they could describe? They are on episode 619, and they have 49 million likes. 619 minor inconveniences of dating a tall boyfriend. Wow! Who knew? It's a good thing I'm only 5'8". Here's one from the drama category. It's called I Love You, and you is a person's name. Dogged by pain and misfortune from the very beginning, Shin-A decides she wants nothing to do with people, nor anything to do with romance. Although content with her unsocial, boring, loveless existence, her lifestyle is challenged after she ruins an unsuspecting stranger's clothes. The average rating of that one is 9.78, and it has 28 million likes. Here's one more. The Strongest Florist. Even though he's built like a fighter with a fearsome scowl, Jae-ho would love nothing more than to become a florist. Unfortunately, Jae-ho's overbearing father disapproves, pushing his son to become an MMA fighter instead. So he's jacked and he's really big and strong. He just wants to be a florist, but his dad pushes him to become an MMA fighter, mixed martial arts fighter. Looking at the illustration, I can confirm he is the strongest florist I have ever seen. All right, today's expression is identify with. If you identify with someone or something, you see a little of your own experience in that other person or thing. You feel a connection based on shared experiences or shared values. At the end of each chapter of the webtoon Maya's World, there is an area for reader comments, just like the comments section below a social media post or a blog post. As I scanned the comments, I noticed that many of the commenters wrote about parts of the story that they identified with, parts of the story that they felt a connection with. Some of the supporting characters in Maya's world were wearing hijabs, the traditional head covering worn by many Muslim women. In the comments, a lot of people said they were happy to see characters in a webtoon wearing a hijab. The commenters might wear hijabs themselves, or they might know people in their family or circle of friends who wear them. Either way, they could identify with Maya's world and with some of the characters because they saw some of their own life experience portrayed in the drawings. They felt a connection. They identified with those characters. At one point in Maya's world, Maya tries to change her class schedule, but a screenshot appears saying the change period has already expired. In the comments, someone wrote that the change period has already expired is every student's nightmare. That commenter clearly identified with the situation. The commenter obviously had that same experience at least once. In the Olympics this year, the American gymnast Simone Biles withdrew from some of her scheduled competitions, citing the stress and pressure she was under. Many people watching the Olympics could identify with that. I certainly could. Now, of course, I've never been in her situation. She's one of the world's best gymnasts. But I and many others could still identify with the feelings that she was describing. She had spoken about all the pressure she was feeling, about the expectations, about her loss of confidence, and the need to focus on her own mental health before going out and competing again. A lot of people identified with that because a lot of people experience pressure, the fear of not living up to expectations, and the sensation of not being able to do something hard. We might not have anywhere near the same level of pressure that Simone Biles has, but we can still identify with her feelings. We can still recognize some of our own experiences in what she said. I read a funny article a while back called "Meet the Introverts Who Are Dreading a Return to Normal." That was back before the Delta variant, back when we thought a return to normal would come in the spring. Anyway, the article talked about how the world's introverts found a silver lining in the pandemic. One writer said, and by the way, aren't so many writers introverts? One writer said, it's like being paroled for a year and then being told, actually, you're going back to prison. I just laughed at that because I can identify with that sentiment. I'm an introvert myself, and I have to say I love working in the peace and quiet of my own home. I could definitely identify with the people interviewed in that article. Time for JR's Song of the Week. Today he has selected Good Life by One Republic. This is an upbeat and happy song. It's definitely not written by an introvert, I'll tell you that. The line is, "This has got to be the good life," as the singer describes a lot of exciting experiences and travels. He ends by saying, "What's there to complain about?" Good Life by One Republic is the song of the week, thanks to JR. There was one tweet in that article about introverts. The writer was dreading a return to normal. He said, all during the pandemic, the introverts kept telling people, "Hey, we'll hang out when this is all over." But pretty soon, that will be exposed as a lie. Oh yes, I can identify with that. Well, I'll tell you, I may be an introvert, but I love our Plain English Plus live conversation calls. That's when a bunch of us get on a Zoom call and just practice talking and conversation, usually about a recent lesson topic. And in a call here in the near future, we'll take a look at some Webtoons together. It's up to you which ones. Maybe we'll see the strong florist, or maybe we'll see that girl who has to pay attention to makeup for the first time. We could check in with Maya and see if she reconnected with her gentleman caller from her previous school. Well, if you're not yet a member of Plain English Plus, there's still time. Maybe not to talk about Webtoons, but we do live conversation calls a few times a month. So there's always one on the calendar coming up. You can join us by visiting plainenglish.com/plus. And once you're in, check your brand new Plus dashboard for upcoming dates and times. Well, that's all for today, August 26th, 2021. We'll be back on Monday with a new lesson. See you then.